like to welcome everybody, the people that just joined. I'm going to mute everybody, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask the questions in the question section or raise your hand, and I'll find you and answer your questions for you. Appreciate all your time. We're a little bit over 30 people now, so we're moving along, but I'll get started right now. So today we're going to talk about cloud computing. We're going to talk about in the era that we're in, why cloud computing is more important than ever. We're going to cover what is the cloud, and then we're going to talk about the difference between remote work. Some of you can work remotely, but they're not, and cloud computing. What's the difference between it? Why cloud computing versus owning your own equipment and working remotely through it, and the difference between them. We're also going to talk about what you have to consider before adopting a cloud strategy. There's a lot of things to consider. We want to make sure that if you're going to go to the cloud and use it, and you're probably using the cloud right now in certain ways, maybe not all the way, and we're going to talk about the different clouds and different cloud solutions and how to adopt it. And then most importantly, we're going to run a demo. I'm going to log into my machine. I'm going to log into the cloud environment. I'm going to show you what I mean by cloud and what an end user experience is with the cloud, because every technical person like me just talks about the cloud and what it is and what have you, but it's nothing like seeing it yourself, like touching it and feeling it and actually watching me log into it and how your end user would be using it. Then I want to talk about how to get started with this. But first, since we have a bunch of people on right now, 32 people, so people are joining us, I'm going to talk and let you know a little bit about myself. My name is Ikram Masabini. I'll be presenting this webinar to you guys. I know some of you already know me. I am the CEO of MVP Network Consulting. Started my career 20-ish some years ago. I have a degree in electrical engineering. I have a lot of IT experiences, a lot of different IT certifications. I'm an IT security consultant. I'm a HIPAA consultant and an auditor when it comes to healthcare organization and also PCI. I'm a father. I'm an author. Here's my book, Computers Should Just Work, and they should. And this is my email address. It's ikram@mvpworks.com. It's simple. If you have any questions about any material, anything technology related, feel free to call me and contact me at any time. So to get started, let's talk about what is the cloud. Well, what is the cloud? Well, what if I told you that the cloud is just someone else's computer? Cloud is your remote access to your environment that would live somewhere else. But if you already own your environment, you have remote access, why even consider this if it's going to give you the same thing? I'm going to talk to you about it in more detail. But first, let's talk about the history of it all. You know, once upon a time, not long ago, about 150 some years ago, companies, largely factories, were required to produce their own power in order to operate a number of their tools, their machines, and make the equipment that they needed. In 1851, not too far away from where we are now, in upstate New York Iron Works, I mean, you guys are familiar with that, we live in Buffalo, Mr. Henry Burden had created this huge monstrosity. It is a big wheel, 600 feet tall, 250 tons behemoth that could produce 500 horsepower, and that generated enough power for him. At the time, that was the way you created power, that was the way you functioned, and that was what you needed. And all different kind of factories had the same type of equipment in their facility to be able to produce power, to be able to create the tools and the equipment that they created, the material they created. But only 50 years later, the invention of electricity as a utility was a game changer. Companies no longer had to produce their own power. It is very quickly becoming a competitive necessity to tap into a cheaper electrical grid than to produce your own. Now think of it that way. The computing is the same thing as happening now in cloud computing. The computing is now, instead of buying your own server and buying your own equipment, you're renting it, leasing it. But it's not just leasing the same thing that you would produce, because with a wheel like this, as one thing broke, you didn't have any power. With cloud computing, multiple things need to break for you not to be able to work. It is reliable, it is accessible, it is flexible, and it is secure. That's the idea here of cloud computing. The same technological revolution is happening today in the cloud. So the application users spend the majority of their time in is a web browser because you're reaching it through the web. The cloud is basically the internet. But we're saying is to move your environment in the internet and to be able to use it that way. And the reason that's happening is because internet connectivity is exploding. It's largely being driven by mobile Wi-Fi. It's easier, it's cheaper to get. Devices are multiplying and getting cheaper. People have 3 to 5 devices on average, each person. Practically all new softwares and applications are written exclusively for the cloud now. They're called SaaS applications, software as a service. So if you use Office 365, or if you use any of those applications that have a SaaS model, you're already using cloud computing. As a matter of fact, the biggest tech drivers like Google, Microsoft, Apple's are investing billions of dollars to deliver cloud services and applications. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're already using cloud computing, whether you have your own server, your own environment, your internal environment or not. Think about it. I mean, what is Google after all than a big free utility? When you need to find something online, you use a web browser to go to Google and tap into the vast database and computing power that Google has. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, they're all cloud-based applications, and they're running in the internet, in the cloud. They're more than just websites. Constant Contact, Aweber, other email broadcast services are all cloud-based. Gmail, Hotmail, free email services, Office 365 are all cloud-based applications. Online banking, SurveyMonkey, every ATM and credit card machine you use is connected to the cloud. What I'm trying to say is the cloud is here, and it's time to truly consider that. With what we're going through and COVID-19 and having to work remotely and really rethinking the way a network is laid out, we're rethinking the way a network should be put together. And the network should be flexible, it should be reliable, it should be secure. So cloud computing comes in to help with that. There's 4 main different types of cloud computing. Number 1 is private cloud. So a private cloud is when you own your own equipment and you host that in a data center on the internet, but you own it. It's used for a single organization and can be internally or externally hosted. In other words, you could host it yourself. So you could build your own cloud in your own environment. And some companies, they're forced to do that because of compliancy, especially PCI. And because they host data that they need to make sure is secure at a specific level. The next, I'm going to talk about public cloud, which is provisioned for open use for the public by a particular organization. So anybody can jump into that public cloud. The community cloud, which is number 3, is shared by several organizations. So you could be in a community cloud. That's what most cloud providers are providing, as a community cloud environment. It's typically externally hosted. It may be internally hosted as well, so you could do your own community cloud, but in general, it's hosted by a cloud provider. And on that same piece of hardware, multiple companies live, separated, but they live together. And then there is the catch-all, the hybrid cloud, which is a little bit of all, a little bit of everything, a little bit of private, a little bit of public. So you could have your own server, you could have certain things hosted in the cloud. That's truly how you should design a network. Composition of 2 or more clouds is basically hybrid cloud. So what do you have to consider before adopting a cloud strategy? Number 1, it needs to be available, it needs to be flexible, it needs to be able to perform at the level that you need it to perform. In other words, when you click on it, it needs to work. You know, I wrote a book that says computers should just work. So should the cloud, and it should be a lot more reliable because you're using something that is in an environment that is redundant, that has not only backup, but has real-time hot failover, and we'll talk about that in a second. You got to have a cloud strategy because there's so many things to consider. So there's a few things for you to consider from that cloud strategy perspective. Your applications that you use, are they thin Or are they thick applications? Can you use them through a VPN, or do you need a terminal session to be able to log in and use those applications? Do you have enough bandwidth? How much bandwidth do you need? And how much throughput can you have through that bandwidth? Do you have redundancy and the redundancy level that you need? Because the more you need, hot versus hot cold, that costs obviously extra. What is your compliance level that we have to think about? In other words, are you a healthcare organization? Have to think about HIPAA. Are you a financial organization that has to think about PCI and everything that comes along with it? Security needs and capabilities are important. Your cloud provider is also important. What are their capabilities? Because remember, we said the cloud is just somebody else's computer. Not that simple, but it's somebody else's environment that you're logging into. And you got to evaluate your readiness. Make sure that you're ready. Make sure that you're not only ready, your applications are ready, but your employees are ready. How you connect to it is ready. The idea of the cloud is to be able to work the same way from anywhere that you are, including your office. So when you move back to your home, you're not working differently. You're working the same exact way. And then cost is another thing you have to consider besides security. So a lot of things to consider here, a lot of things to do. And I keep talking about remote access versus cloud, but it's important to really realize this, that you could own your own server and you're connecting through the internet versus taking your server and putting that in the internet. So in the cloud, you can access your files and entire infrastructure from any device at any time. And I do mean any device. You could use your Windows device on your laptop or your iPhone or your Android device or your iPad. Any device that you may have will log you into your environment that you consider work. With remote desktop software though, if you're going to work remote access, if you will, you can access any specific desktop, the files, the applications, and everything else related to desktop from a remote location. But if that desktop goes down, you're down. If that connectivity goes down, you're down. So you need to be aware of the difference between remote access versus cloud computing. So we'll talk about cloud computing. Cloud computing, like I said, is taking everything that you have internally, being your servers, your desktops, your software and platform, and putting it in the internet, available there, secure it there, and connect to it the same way from any place that you may be. So if you're home, if you're at the office, wherever it may be, you're working the same exact way, including your phones. Your phones will be in the cloud as well. That means that if you take that laptop home, you could work and answer your phone calls like you would at the office. That means that in the era that we're in right now, if your secretary that answers your phone now has to work from home, she should be able to answer the phone the same exact way and transfer it the same exact way. Everybody should work the same way wherever they are. Cloud computing allows us and affords us the capability to be able to do that. Now, hybrid cloud is important because it's important to know what you can and can't do. It depends on your application, depends on how thick they are, what they require to run. There is some assessments that has to be done first in order to be able to provide the right solution for you. So why is remote access is different than the cloud, and what is the difference? I'd like to talk about the main differences here. What is the advantages of the cloud? So if you look at the first picture that I have here, and I think somebody's asking a question, so bear with me. Okay, I'll come back to that question later. Thank you. So what are the difference between remote access and cloud? What is the advantage of the cloud? If you look at the first picture, you'll notice that this is just a layout of a regular network. The cloud, which is the internet, it goes to an ISP, which is your internet service provider, that goes into a router / firewall. These two devices are usually the same. You're usually connecting an access point to your router so that your laptops have Wi-Fi in your office, and then everything else is connected to one switch. Your PCs, your printer, your servers are all connected to one switch, creating a domain internally. And if you want to reach that remotely, you could connect via VPN. You could remote desktop into your server or your PC and work that way. certain things are not going to work in that scenario. Your phones, for instance, your maybe webcam may give you issues, your printing may be an issue. Remote access requires some work and finagling. When it comes to the cloud, though, is that it's the same layout but 10 times over. In other words, instead of one router, you have two, and they're backing each other up with a heartbeat in the middle. If one fails, the other one automatically takes over. Instead of one server, you have 2, 8, 16, whatever cloud environment you're in. These servers are all backing each other up. So if one fails, the other one automatically takes over. In a cloud environment, you're in a hot scenario. What you're doing in a cloud environment is eliminating hardware issues from being something you have to worry about. In a cloud environment, it is flexible. If you need more computing, it's easy to add more cores and RAM and hard drive space to your servers that you have. It is reliable because if one thing fails, the other one automatically takes over, and it's secured because it comes with a layer of security that from your service provider. You tell your service provider you want to be HIPAA secured or PCI secured. There's a list of applications they have to load and security measures they have to do on the cloud that you really would have to do internally, but you're doing it on one box, and if that box fails, you're out of commission. You have to restore from backup, or you must have the disaster recovery solution that you have to call somebody to get you up and running. And in cloud environment, you eliminate all of that because everything is backed up. Everything has a secondary piece of hardware. It costs more to be in the cloud, to build the cloud, but overall, you end up seeing that you're saving money because you don't have to worry about the maintenance and updates and what have you. So most importantly, make sure that your cloud that you decide to go with, when you've done all of the assessment, but make sure that your cloud environment should look something like this: a large data center that is organized, that is neat, that is secured, is well cooled, it has generator backup, it has what you need to make sure that your environment is always available, reliable, flexible, and secured. So also make sure that it doesn't look like this, because we've seen that. And we've seen cloud environments that look just like that, with people trying to make it work hodgepodge together. It's truly not a cloud environment. It's truly as a remote access into one server sold as cloud. It's important to know the level of redundancy that you have in your cloud environment. It's important to know that this is a lot more reliable than this. It's important to know that this costs a little bit more than that also. So not all clouds are created equal. What rights does your cloud provider reserve over your data? How long will the cloud service store your data if you terminate services? Do they secure your data properly? Will they notify you of a breach? Your cloud provider and who you're going to pick is just as important of your cloud readiness assessment and your capabilities to handle the cloud in your environment. And all that has to be tested and managed. So I think I spoke enough. I think I said enough. And what I'd like to do here is just log in and show you what the cloud looks like in real time. See if any other questions before I get started. And no other questions. So having said that, I will now get started on the demo. So I'm going to minimize my presentation, minimize everything that I have, and here's my local machine. This is my machine, my laptop that I'm connected to. This laptop, I'm connected to the internet. It has, even though it's only connected to the internet, I'm not connected in any other way. I have some cloud applications that I use. So I use Office 365. In other words, when I click on Outlook, it goes through the internet. It shows me all my emails and everything that I need. I also have Word, Excel, and Teams that I use. I have the web browser, so I can go to Google and I can do searches. I can go to Facebook. So I'm connected to the cloud, to the internet, where a lot of cloud applications are there, including my own that we pay for, like Office 365. And I'm working on files that I have locally. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you how to do remote work. So if I now go into my File Explorer and I come into this PC, I can see that I have some map drives, like my HR or shared drive, my M drive or my Q drive or what have you. There is an X next to them. It's trying to find them, but these are located in an internal, it's not in the cloud. This is on a server that is in our facility. And for me to be able to use the stuff on that, in that environment, I have to connect to it in a different way. And in order to do that, okay, so this is my desktop. I just noticed that you guys could not see the desktop. So I'm going to show you what I mean. Here's my desktop. I'm going to repeat that piece a little bit. It's the local desktop. My stuff is on it. My email is on it. So if I open Outlook, it will go out through Office 365. That's a cloud-enabled application. So I'm able to get all that stuff just by having internet connectivity. But then I was talking about my files. So if I go to File Explorer, I see that all my map drive now has an X next to them. I'm not connected to that environment. In order to connect to that environment, I first have to VPN in. Let me explain VPN a little bit. And this is our client VPN application. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. What it means is I'm going to create a connection, secured and encrypted, from the location that I'm at, my machine, through that internet to my firewall at my location. So if I click enable, I can then put in my username and password. Which will then authenticate me, make sure I am who I say I am. Hopefully I typed that long password correctly. It's going to then connect me to my environment and provision me and give me an IP. And then basically it's like I ran a cable from my machine all the way to the office. Because I'm so far away though, some things will work and some things won't work that well through VPN. So some applications are thin applications, then they work fine through VPN. Some applications are thick applications. Thick applications means that you have to actually download a larger portion of that database, that file, down before you could start using the application. And every change you make has to re-upload that large file. That takes too long to do, and the VPN then become unusable for those applications. But now that I'm connected, if I click on any of those shared files, they start showing up. See the X starting to disappear next to the shared files that I have. And now I'm able to function and open up certain Word documents or what have you, like this. And you could see how it's going to work. It's going to go out. It downloaded. I can delete this piece. I can now click save on this Word document, and it will save it back through the VPN to where it belongs. So this is kind of like remote access. This is how I'm working. But if I want to use another application like QuickBooks, it won't work very well through VPN. And with QuickBooks, what I have to do then is then log in to either a terminal server or a computer, another computer at the office that I use, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I will come into my remote desktop, and then this is my work PC. If that PC is off, I can't reach it. I have to call somebody and tell them to turn it on. It's not a cloud desktop. It's a PC that is actually physical that I'm connecting to when I connected at the office. So if I double click on it, it's now gonna, through that VPN connection, connect me to that machine and log me in. Now my QuickBooks is right in front of us, and I'm able to use it as I would normally, and I'm able to use any other application that I may have like I would normally off that desktop. However, if I save anything on this desktop, it saves it on that desktop and that environment. I would have to save it in a map drive to be able to retrieve it off of my local machine. It's a little cumbersome. You really have to know what you're doing in order to do this properly. So that's kind of like remote access. It's a little different than a cloud computing setup. And then I can disconnect from that desktop that I connected to. Other applications, even like QuickBooks, that are thicker, and I don't want to have to buy a desktop or have a terminal server set up to be able to log into it, I can actually publish those applications. And what that means is that I can take those applications, set up one server, and allow that server to publish them out to the internet. And it looks like what I'm showing you right now. I went to a web page. I will put in my username and password and click sign in. That will sign me into all the applications. Now I don't have to be on the VPN for this to work. I can actually use this on my iPad, my any other devices. So this is the initial step, if you will, of taking you more and making any application that you have, work through a browser. So now I can click on QuickBooks, even though I don't have QuickBooks loaded locally on this machine. If I click connect me to that, I didn't have to connect to another desktop or a VPN first. Now it's going to ask me for my password. And again, I use the password as a passphrase. It's important to have a large password from a security perspective. 16 characters at a minimum is what we recommend. Obviously, I have to re-log in. Okay, I finally entered it properly. Now you see that the terminal server is logging in. It's giving me access to that desktop, but because it's a published app that I'm using, it's not really giving me access to the desktop, just that app. I told the system to, when I click on this icon, I want you to only open that app, but now it looks like QuickBooks is actually loaded on my machine, and it's going to start working as if I'm in it. Even though, if you notice, the icon of QuickBooks now has 2 arrows because it's not really loaded here. I'm not using it off my machine. I'm using it through a remote desktop, through a remote access, and I can use it remotely. A lot of different steps. Remote access is a little confusing. You really have to know where you're saving and what you're doing and how to do it. And that's how people are functioning, and they don't really use it properly all the way through. I'm going to close that. And as soon as I closed it, the session ended. But now let's talk about cloud and the difference here. We want the network to be flexible. We are talking about a flexible network. In other words, what we want to try to do here is that if another pandemic like this come, inclement weather come, you tell everybody, go home, work from home. Everything at home will work the same exact way you work in the office because of the cloud. Because we're going to put even your desktop in the cloud, your servers in your cloud, including your phone system in the cloud. This is the phone system we use. It's the Avaya Cloud Office, my direct number, and this is the phone system that now, think of it this way. Your secretary, your assistants can go home and still receive the calls and transfer the calls without a lot of headache. The same way she does it at the office, the same way she's functioning in the office, she's going to function wherever she may be or he may be. It's important to know that there's cloud applications that are built for an environment like that. So let's log into a cloud desktop. What I'm going to do here, then close everything that I have open, including my VPN connection. I'm going to disable that. Now I'm not connected to anything else. Everything else is disabled. Everything else is gone. I am not connected back. If I go back to my File Explorer, all these that were available before will spin because my connection is no longer, my VPN is no longer connected. So I'm going to close all these, and now I'm going to go to our cloud desktop. This cloud desktop is actually hosted in the Microsoft Azure data center. And it works the same way if it's hosted in ours. We use VMware in our data center. Azure obviously uses the Microsoft system. And I wanted to show you what this looks like. All I have to do is click on the remote desktop. And this stands for, WVD stands for Windows Virtual Desktop. It's in a pool. In other words, because of the power of the cloud, I can actually have machines. When you log into them, you get a brand new image. You could do your work, do whatever you need to do, and then when you log out, that machine disappears. You log back in, you get another new image. It's like getting a brand new desktop every time you log in. If you created an issue, something happened, guess what? Log out, log back in, you get a brand new desktop yet again. Now, there's some limitations there because then that doesn't allow you to load new applications. But for most users, we don't want them to load applications. We want them to focus on the work. And the applications are pre-done for them, pre-installed for them, pre-configured for them. That's why the beauty is that it eliminates a lot of the headaches of traditional IT, of having to fix issues with hardware or machines. If I double click on this first Windows Virtual Desktop pool, if you will, that I'm connected to, I can have multiple ones. I didn't have to connect to the VPN. It didn't pop up to ask me to put a long string of username and password. It didn't tell me to reconnect again. All of a sudden, my other desktop disappeared, and now I am in a new desktop, and this new desktop is my cloud desktop. I can have my map drives here, so anything that I save on this map drive will also show up on my local machine, but also show up in my cloud environment. So the servers are set up in the same environment this machine is. I can open up Word or Teams, and I can be functional. You see how a cloud desktop is functioning? It's functioning quickly. It's not causing a lot of issues. It is working as if I am loaded locally on a machine. That's the idea here. I can actually do the same exact thing on my iPad or my iPhone. I can have full functionality and be fully available, flexible, reliable, and secured in an environment by taking the entire network that I have, including my desktops, and then putting those in the cloud, in the internet, in a data center that's secured, that's SOC compliant, that's available, that has generator backup, that has multiple servers backing each other up. Cloud is usually not cheaper. The cloud is better. It's better because it's more available, it's more flexible, and that's why we talk about the hybrid cloud being the best of both worlds, being the best of your own private and your own and the cloud environment. You may want to keep your own server internally for certain specific applications or certain files, or maybe CAD files that may be too large for the cloud to handle, because if you need to run CAD on the internet, you'll need to have what we call a GPU, a graphic processing unit, that will work on those large files, because those files get to be a gig large, and you don't want to have to wait to download that through your internet connectivity. So you may want a local server. There's reasons why hybrid cloud is the best way to look at it. There's reasons why you have to do a cloud readiness assessment and to understand what you use, how it will work on the cloud, and how flexible we can make it. So that's important to know, and it's important to consider that I'm now in a cloud environment and it works the same. But if I come up here and minimize this, here's my local desktop again with my phone system that I'm using or what have you, but also here's my cloud desktop. You see it down there? All I have to do is click on it, and it makes the other one disappear, and now I'm fully functional in this desktop. I am working the way I'm supposed to be working. And now if I go anywhere, if I go home, I log into this. If I'm on the road and I only have my iPad with me, this will show up on my iPad and it will work with touch. Cloud computing gives you flexibility, gives you reliability, and make sure that you're fully secured and compliant. Now, you have to talk to your cloud provider to make sure so that they can understand how compliant you need to be. You have to really understand what you have and what you have to offer and what you need to make sure is built around what your needs are. Like I said, hybrid cloud is usually the best solution because it's a little bit of everything and it's done to fit your specific need. It allows us to really customize that environment for you and make it specific just for you to use. So that's cloud computing, and this is how it's set up. I wanted to show you guys this from an end user's perspective, because yeah, we're in the cloud. What does that mean? We're in the cloud, and I wanted to show you how to log into it, what publish apps means, and what a cloud desktop really looks like from an Azure or Microsoft perspective or any other perspective. It ends up looking the same. The icons are just different in what you click on, depending on the provider that you use. So let's go back to our presentation now. So bear with me. Let me share the right screen. Okay. I'll pause for a second and see if we have any questions before I move on. Okay. One question came up. How important is my house Wi-Fi? Well, you're connected to the internet. It's very important to make sure that your network that you're connected to doesn't have issues, no latency. Is it important for you to be wired into your network? No, it's not. Wi-Fi will work if it's good Wi-Fi. So so don't go to Starbucks and expect it to work the same way everything else works. It's important to know that. And also, it's important to know that making sure that now, if we have some clients that inside their home, we've actually installed a firewall and a point-to-point VPN back, so that they don't have to use that client VPN that I've showed you. There's different ways to do this, if you will. So I would like you to become aware of that and to understand what I'm trying to say here is that your home network matters, and we want to make sure that it's secured. Sometimes if you don't have a soft phone like I showed you, you may have to have a voice over IP hard phone, and you may need to wire that down to wherever your internet comes in. So yes, your home network is important. Do we use Azure on our internal data center? We have our own data center. Our own data center is SOC certified. We have our own equipment in it. We're able to offer what Azure offers at a reduced rate. The difference is the level of redundancy. We use Azure, and we use Azure for certain clients that require high level of redundancy, because Azure is hot in multiple data centers. Azure is the Microsoft data center, basically, for anybody that doesn't know that. So having said that, yes, we do use Azure, but we also use our own data center for our clients and ourselves. Our own data center is very reliable. It's hot cold. We have backup in multiple data centers, but we have to go manually and tell it to fail over. Internally to our environment, we have multiple servers backing each other up, but an entire data center has to be manually pushed over to our secondary data centers. We do it that way to save our clients money. We do it that way because it's reliable, it's flexible, it's secured, but it's also less expensive than a hot data center. And if we're looking for hot for specific clients and specific requirements, we'll use the Azure environment. So everything has its place, and that's why it's important to understand that. Okay, let's go back to the present. No other questions right now. Okay. Okay, next. So because you joined us today and I talked about this assessment and everything that we're going to need, I'd like to offer you guys a 30-minute free consultation and cloud assessment. We'll do that for you during our consultation. You'll meet with MVP service and leadership team to determine which cloud is right for you. We're going to ask you questions. We're going to see how you're using the cloud now, because believe me, you're using it in some form or fashion. We're going to ask you to go to mvpworks.com/COVID-19, or just go to mvpworks.com. There's a form right there, and please fill out that form. We're going to take a handful of people and help create that cloud strategy and create that cloud assessment and let you know what it would take, what's the best configuration for you, what's the best solution for you from an application perspective, from a user's perspective, from a desktop perspective. Is everything in the cloud the right solution for you, or is it a hybrid cloud environment that's right for you? It's important to know what it is, but it's important to do that work first. It's like an x-ray. A doctor can't tell you if you're broken without an x-ray. We can't tell you what you need to do without having a cloud assessment and a consultation done. We are MVP Network Consulting after all, so we are here to consult with you and show you the best way to make your network more flexible. We keep thinking about COVID-19 and what we're going through. We keep thinking about how we can make the network more available or more flexible. Before COVID-19, people would go and say, hey, I need to work from home, but so I need myself, my controller, my sales manager to be able to work from home. These are the people that I need to have access from anywhere. Okay, that's all well and good, but COVID-19 came, and then remote access would be the solution there. And now we want everybody to be able to work remotely. Remote access is not great for that, for everybody. Remote access is not great for phones and all the different applications you may have. Cloud environment is able to provide that for us. A hybrid cloud is usually the right solution to fit anybody's specific needs. So without further ado, and coming to the end of our presentation, I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to wish you to be healthy and safe, and to think about how flexible your network needs to be. Think about what you've been through since you have to work remotely, and what worked, what didn't work. What are you living with that you shouldn't be living with anymore? You should be focusing on work. You should work the same way wherever you go. The technology is available. It's time to really look at where we are and get ready for, they say, the other wave of COVID-19 or any other virus that may hit us, or anything else that may hit us, including inclement weather. We live in Buffalo after all. Be ready to have everybody work remotely. Build your network, make it flexible, make it reliable, make it secure, and partner with the right cloud provider. In this case, we believe it's us. We spend a lot of time. This is what we use developing these solutions. There's a million ways to skin that cat, but this is the only way to do it, is to listen first and to provide the right technology for you to use. I'm going to see if we have any other questions. If not, I'd like to thank you for your time, ask you to be safe, and we'll have a recording of this webinar available by tomorrow on our MVP University page on our website. For everybody that actually joined this webinar, I'd like to thank you for your time, and we will send you a link to find that recording if you're interested in it, to have somebody else watch it, or for you to review it in any way. Without further ado, if you will, I will take any other questions, and I'll also open up everybody's mics to make sure that you're no longer muted, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, all right, everybody's unmuted now. So I have one question, a few questions came through. Okay, let's see. I'm still seeing the slide and demos. Yes, I understand. I fixed that. We don't see Ikram's computer. Yes, I fixed that. How far off do you estimate the local CPU will be obsolete, i.e. the local hardware? Well, I mean, I'm telling you, you have to use something to connect to it. It's obsolete now once you're in a complete pure cloud environment. In a pure cloud, in other words, a full cloud, something where your desktop is in the cloud, you could use a thin client. That client can only be basically a keyboard, mouse, video, and a network card. It doesn't have CPU, it doesn't have RAM, and the power happens on the cloud side. So this is now, but we're always going to need some kind of processing internally for different applications and different powers. I prefer a local desktop than a thin client, even though I have it stripped down and I have it very bare boned, if you will. At the same time, it does have power behind it, and if I need to use it, I will. So not for everybody. I can see CAD users always needing a desktop, but other users will not, and they can use thin clients. Next. And this question was from Rob Curtis. Thank you very much. Next is, how can we tell if our environment would benefit from the cloud solution? Is it possible to save costs? It's a very good question. So yes, it is possible to save costs. It depends on what you're doing now and how you're doing it. You no longer have to pay and buy new hardware. You don't have to worry about the maintenance of that hardware. Everything is bundled within a cloud environment. It depends again on the applications that you use and how you use the cloud, how many locations you have, how many users you have, your bandwidth. There's a lot that we need to look at, but it's easily said that you would benefit from the cloud because then you make your network flexible. You're able to take that laptop and you work from home, from Starbucks, or from your office the same exact way every time. It's less confusing for your employees. It's more productive. You get your return on investment quickly with the cloud. The last other question was about Azure, and Azure is the Microsoft data center. So let me explain that a little bit since we had a couple of questions. Azure is a data center that's highly available, and you get to buy computing power and pay for the computing that you're using. So you pay for the CPU, you pay for the RAM, and it's hosted by Microsoft. With Microsoft, you have to worry about your own backup and some security tools that Microsoft may have that you'll add to it, but it needs to be managed after all. Microsoft does not manage the environment. Microsoft guarantees uptime and reliability and flexibility, and we would guarantee the security of it. However, it's not the right solution for everybody. Some should be internal. On-prem servers may be required. A hybrid cloud solution is usually the right fit for just about any company, especially for the companies that we deal with. We deal with organizations between 20 to 1,000 employees. Some are a little larger, but it is what it is. Our sweet spot is between 20 to 150 employees. If you're in that spot, how can we split that cloud for you? How can we design that cloud environment? That depends on what you're using and how you're doing it and your level of compliancy. So we help you get there. One more questions came in. We have used the cloud in the past and have issues and certain software that uses its own servers that don't necessarily work well in the cloud. Have you experienced something of this nature? So yes, and this question is from David. David, thanks for the question. Yes, there is applications that don't work great in the cloud. There's applications that are more DOS-based, applications that are more thick applications that require a traditional machine to run on, and that's okay. And that's where the hybrid cloud is. What we do is in this situation is that we would install that application locally so you could use it properly. And then what we do is create something called an AD sync, an active directly sync with your cloud environment, so that you could actually use then your cloud environment and that application in unison all together. It used to be a lot more difficult to do that. So if you've done this in the past, I can see you having some issues. But nowadays, there's very few applications we can think of that won't work well in the cloud. I hope that answers your questions. If you have any others, please speak up and let me know. One more questions came in from Anshul. Hi, Anshul. Anshul, is there a cloud application for a phone system to operate on, especially during this time? Yes, there is. So depending on the software, the system that you have, do you have an on-premise system? In other words, a system that's located locally? I know you do. That on-premise system may have soft phone applications you may use. However, service provider and like Avaya, for instance, just released a full-on cloud phone system that's an application driven. So let me do this and close this presentation, and let me share the right screen. And these are some of the questions. So I'm going to minimize this real quick, and then I will show you that application. This is a soft phone application. This application allows me to get my voicemail, my faxes, and my texts here. This application allows me to have my calendar here, allows me to make my call logs, who's on the phone and who's not, and allows me to function in that fashion. So yes, there is do video conferencing, sharing of files. All these applications are available. And if our next webinar is actually going to be geared towards the cloud phone system. And another webinar will be on the overall cloud office and what that should look like. But today we wanted to discuss the cloud system itself, the cloud environment, and what that looks like. Anshul, I hope I answered your questions, and I hope you're doing well. It's been at least 2 months since we've seen each other. Any other questions? I'm waiting for them to come in. Yes, Anshul, thank you very much for responding. Since we're coming at the end here, we got 4 minutes left. I'll stay on if anybody has any questions. If not, I truly appreciate your time, and I hope I've given you enough information. And Anshul, thank you for that question. Yes, I will follow up with you on this after after today. I'll call you by tomorrow, and we could discuss what the needs here are. Because you do have a solution that I think we could retrofit and make it work for you. I'd like to discuss some things with you. So Anshul, I'll be giving you a call on that. So thank you very much. Okay. Let me see if I have any other questions. Okay, we'll look forward to it. Thank you very much, and I got your answer here. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I hope this was beneficial. I hope you understand a little bit more of the cloud. Join us in the next webinar and take advantage of the 30-minute consultation. It's something that we usually charge for. It's something that's important to do. And if you're interested in the cloud, if you're interested to just forget the cloud, if you're interested to make your network more flexible, to be able to be available and work from anywhere the same exact way, take advantage of this 30 minutes and we will be happy to show you the best way to do it. So thank you for your time. As people end up leaving this presentation, I hope you found it beneficial. And in this case, I'll end on this note that we're available, we're here, MVP is working remotely. Every one of our employees are home. They're functioning remotely as if we're in the office. When you call our number, the receptionist that answers at her house or his house, they transfer that way. Everybody's using the technology that we're showing you here. We're a cloud-based company, so we work the same way at the office that we do at our houses. And I wanted to show you different ways, the difference between remote access and cloud computing and its power. Cloud computing is usually, if you go for pure cloud, is usually more reliable, more flexible, more secure, but it comes at a cost. And we need to see what you need to make it, to build that environment properly for you. So call us, take advantage of this. And I want to thank you for your time today and wish you all a safe year. And hopefully soon enough, our life will come back to normal. There'll be the new normal, not the things we were comfortable with or familiar with. We'll have to adapt, but with technology like this, it will make our adoption a little easier. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you later.